of my prison was opened by love. The ransom was paid. I was free. I'm free from the fear of tomorrow. I'm free from the guilt of my past. I've traded my shackles for a glorious song. I'm free, praise the Lord, free at last.
I am free from the guilt that I carried, from the dull, empty life I used to live. When I met Jesus, He made me complete. I forgot the foolish child I used to be. I'm free from the fear of tomorrow. I'm free from the guilt of my past. I've traded my shackles for a glorious song. I'm free, praise the Lord, free at last. I've traded my shackles for a glorious song. I'm free, praise the Lord, free at last.
Whom love's made free is free indeed. No more shackles, no more chains. Whom love's made free is free indeed. No more bondage and will never be the same. Whom love's made free is free indeed. No more shackles, no more chains. Whom love's made free is free indeed. No more bondage and will never be the same. And we will run and we will dance. We will sing, for love has made us free. We will run this race before us. We'll be the ones to shout your praise. And we will dance upon injustice. Sing out your anthem all our days. We will run, and we will dance. We will sing, for love has made us free. And we will run and we will dance. We will sing, for love has made us free. And whom love sets free is free indeed. No more shackles, no more chains. Whom love sets free is free indeed. No more bondage and will never be the same. No more bondage and will never be the same. No more bondage and will never be the same.
Hello, welcome back to the Village. I'm Athanasia, and I'm here to tell you about giving. So, thank you to Deborah for singing, and on that note, here's how you can give. You can text the word GIVE to 404-998-8979. You can go to thevillageatlanta.com/give, or you can mail a check to 3418 Dogwood Drive, Hapeville, Georgia, 30354. Please never feel pressured to give. You can please give if you are capable and feel it in your heart to. We greatly appreciate it if you can. And on that note, more singing.
There's a holy place filled with grace where moms and dads give warm embrace to heal the hearts broken by God. It's what we do. We love you through it all. Love is love. It heals the pain, gives us hope to try again. When the darkness in our soul tells us lies, we can know love wins. There's a scary place we call life, where promises feel like lies. There is hope. Some call it Christ. It feels like love. It helps us through it all. Love is love. It heals the pain, gives us hope to try again. When the darkness in our soul tells us lies, we can know love wins.
Wow. Thank you, Neil Campbell. That was beautiful. I was so thrilled when I realized the song that you were writing, and I could tell from your just your comments of how it was grabbing you, and then you communicated it so beautifully. Thank you. And thank you, Deborah Lynn Rodriguez. You are a rock star, and it is an honor to have you as a part today of our Village family and a part of our Everybody Church family. And we'd love to have you come back and do all the music. So when your schedule will allow it, it'll be wonderful to have you come back. Thank you, too, for tuning in. Thank you for watching this week's service. Every week we're meeting new friends and having new contacts through the internet where people are saying, hey, we discovered your church and we didn't even know there was such a place. And it has been a really cool thing to get to meet new friends, at least socially distant, meeting them on the internet. And I'm excited about the time we can spend together. Hey, last week, and you can find this on YouTube and you can find it on Facebook, last week I talked about the need for us to practice patience. Do you remember that? And the whole idea was we need to practice patience with others. I think the term was we need to learn to cut people some slack. I said we need to practice patience with ourselves, and I talked about how tough I had been on myself, especially as a younger person, when I was really trying hard. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of screwed up in what was important, and I didn't cut myself much slack. And as I've gotten older, I've realized usually as we know better, we do better, and it's important to cut ourselves some slack there. And then I talked about having patience as it relates to events in our life. People who are trying to rush the coronavirus, to me, seem foolish. This is not something that can be rushed. It was very sad to me that Herman Cain passed away, but it also, he went to Tulsa and said, this is not a big deal, and I can not wear a mask, and I can be in situations where I put myself at risk. And so you can't rush through these things, right? Don't think this is going to be over with next week or next month. It's going to be over when it's over, and you wishing it different isn't going to change. But there is another side to the coin as it relates to this patience with ourselves. Because if you are not careful, it can lead to a passivity that won't serve you well. It can lead you to just kind of being a slacker as it relates to your life, and your life can just sail by and you will have missed what could have been the best because you settled for something that was very mediocre. I want to introduce you to two words. at the very beginning, and then I'm going to hopefully explore these ideas through the book of Proverbs, and I think it can be very helpful. And this is one of those talks that has resonated with me all week, has convicted me all week, and I hope is leading to change in my life, and I hope more than anything that it will do the same thing to you. I hope you will hear it in my voice and it will resonate in you. Here's the first word I want to introduce you to. The word is entropy. Are you familiar with the word? Now, its primary meaning comes out of the world of physics. And quite frankly, I read the definition about 15 times and said, I don't even want to go there. I don't even understand what it's saying. You real smart science people, I know you understand it. You're smarter than me in science. I give it to you. I want to give you the second and the third tier of the definition, all right? For our purposes today, entropy is a gradual decline into disorder. Entropy is a gradual decline into disorder. Or said another way, entropy is everything that is left to itself has a tendency to deteriorate. Entropy is everything that is left to itself, it has a tendency to deteriorate. And quite frankly, entropy is a great enemy of the human spirit. Everything when left on its own, when not given attention and energy, has a tendency to deteriorate. That's the way it works in human life. Now, a second word that has a different meaning, but is helpful for me in understanding this, not becoming so oriented toward patience with myself that I actually am passive in my life. The second word is the word complacent. We're a little more familiar with that word. Complacent is the idea of being so settled in your life that you forget there's a potential to get better, to do better, to be better. You just kind of settle. You cut yourself slack and you don't grow. You just kind of stop. I read a lot about complacency this week. This was interesting. One writer said this: the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. We've seen that before, right? The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. But in a similar way, the opposite of life is not death, it's complacency. There's life, and then there's complacency. When you become apathetic or complacent or settle for the path of least resistance in areas of your life, entropy can set in, dreams die, hopes fade. Then a terrible thing happens. You learn you can live with mediocrity. It's not a great life, but hey, you can tolerate it. You can survive it. I read an interesting quote this week. Listen to this. Complacency is a blight that saps energy, dulls attitude, and causes a drain on the brain. The quote continues, the first symptom is satisfaction with things as they are. The second is rejection of things as they might be. Good enough becomes today's watchword and tomorrow's standard. So you have these two ideas, entropy, complacency, against the backdrop of last week in giving yourself patience if you haven't grown as much as you would like, to make sure that you don't settle and you don't get so passive that you are not actively attempting to grow. This idea of entropy or settled complacency is behind many of the wisdom teachings in the book of Proverbs. Let me give you some of these teachings. I really believe in Proverbs we discover that a wise person is always going to be on the lookout for early signs of complacency or entropy setting in their life. A wise person is going to consciously be on the alert to just be aware that complacency or entropy are not setting in their lives. Proverbs 27:23 through 24 shows us the picture of someone who has livestock, and they have this need to monitor their condition. And though the words are speaking of livestock, it actually is true of any area of our life. Listen to this. This is the scripture, Proverbs. Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. What is the wisdom literature saying? You have to be aware. You have to be on the alert, or through lack of attention and ignoring your life, things can begin to deteriorate and fall away. Every day you have to be on the lookout for entropy or complacency, because things left to their own will stagnate, they will regress, and they will ultimately die. Though things might have been okay yesterday, that doesn't mean they're going to stay okay forever. Put any important area of your life on autopilot and risk complacency or entropy that can be very subtle, but as subtle as it might be, it will lead to 100% of the time destruction. Your life will be less than you wanted it to be. Complacency or entropy can strike any area of your life. It can strike businesses. It can strike families. It can strike the church. I've thought about this all week. When a church first gets started, and I thought about the Village Church because we started 28 years ago. When a church first gets started, it's normally a very tiny group of people who have a dream to be used by God to touch their community. That's what they want more than anything, is to impact their community because they have a trust in God that they are a part of something good. And that dream drives them. It makes them do all that they do. And there's a lot of energy that's exerted. A lot of things are done. People are kind of coming and it's a part, and we know why we're here. There's a dream. People are willing to work towards the realization of that dream. But over time, a really bad thing begins to happen. A church either grows complacent and satisfied, and if that happens, then they begin to stagnate or die, or entropy sets in, and the dream literally begins to go away. Entropy takes over in a church, and the focus shifts from how can I help the dream become a reality to just a routine. I just come because it's a part of a routine, not how this can become the beautiful place we once dreamed it could be. People go from living to help bring about the dream to just sitting and being consumers. But there's complacency and entropy, and it eventually dies out. It's true in our spiritual lives. I have known so many people, in fact, I have been this, who have felt like, listen, I have been a follower of God, or tried to be a follower of God or a follower of Jesus for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. In other words, I feel safe and satisfied. And yet, for many that I have witnessed, and even in my own life, I can look and say, I haven't grown, I haven't matured, I haven't gotten stronger in my faith or more understanding in my faith. I really believe that God calls all of us to action. This is not supposed to be a lazy boy recliner kind of a life where we just coast, where we just kind of put the legs up on the chair and we just kind of tilt back with the iced tea on the table and the remote control in our hands and say, this is my life. There has to be more than that, or complacency and entropy end up killing our lives. We have said around the village for a long time, we really want to help people get better so they can do better, so they can be better. And said another way, we want to help people get healthier so they can be healthier, so they can do healthier things. And it's just this sense of we are growing living organisms. We are not going to just sit here and think that we know all the answers and we have opened our hearts to God and so that's it. We want to actually live, and we want to grow, and we want to be a part of the best life possible. God's will for the human spirit, for individuals, for families, for workplaces, for churches, is that we would never grow complacent or never let entropy set in. That's why the book of Proverbs has a lot to say about the subject. Consider Proverbs chapter 24, verses 30 through 34. Here's what the writer says. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of the man who lacks judgment. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and I learned a lesson from what I saw. Do you get the picture? The writer says, I went by a vineyard, and I saw that the owner of the vineyard had just let it go, and all kind of weeds had grown up. I was really excited yesterday. I did a socially distant wedding at Yona Mountain Vineyards in Dahlonega, Georgia. And it is one of our favorite venues in Georgia for weddings. It is a beautiful vineyard in the mountains. I think it's one of our favorite venues, first off, because Jane loves the white wine that they make there. She thinks it is the best of anywhere she's ever been. But second, I think we love it because there is something so beautiful about a vineyard. And what always strikes me when I'm there is all of the thought and all of the actions that went into the rows and rows and rows of grapes that are growing there that are going to produce incredible wines. But it's just amazing. You know, someone has paid attention. Someone has not been asleep at the wheel. Someone hasn't just forgotten responsibility. Someone has kept their eye on the vineyard. A fruitful, productive vineyard is a thing of beauty. But here's the thing about vineyards, they don't just happen by themselves. Vineyards don't just spring up by accident. Someone is behind them. Someone is working on them every day. The writer of Proverbs says, I was going past a vineyard, and guess what? It was a mess. There were thorns all over the place, the grounds were covered with weeds, and the walls were falling down. Now, if you want to understand the angst behind this proverb, to understand what we're trying to communicate today, you have to understand that in the ancient Middle East, a piece of land capable of growing crops was one of the most valuable things in the world. I mean, if you had a piece of land and it could grow something on it, that was amazing. So to be the owner of a vineyard was to be blessed with the opportunity of a lifetime. What's Proverbs wanting us to understand? I think it's wanting us to understand that it's beautiful to own a vineyard, but it's also beautiful to know that represents your own life. Here's some wisdom for you. Complacency and entropy starts when I fail to comprehend that this is my one and only chance at existence on this planet. And some people are just wasting it. You are wasting it. This is your vineyard. This is your life. Everybody gets a vineyard. When you were born, you got a vineyard. You got your body, your mind, your will, some relationships. You got financial resources and the chance to do some good work. You got a soul. Everybody gets a vineyard, and that vineyard is my one and only shot on this planet. It's my opportunity of a lifetime. Nevertheless, God never forces anybody to take action and care for their vineyard. Your arm is not twisted behind your back. You will take care of your vineyard. No, you have every right to not take care of it. So the writer of Proverbs said, I was walking past a vineyard and I thought of what it might have been. He sees that the vineyard could have been a thing of beauty. It could have been a source of pride. It could have been a beautiful thing. It could have been income to the owner. It could have been a blessing to everybody around it, because in ancient cultures, a place that grew things that people could eat or drink, that was a blessing to everybody. But the vineyard, the writer observed, wasn't any one of those things. It fell tragically short of what it might have been. The writer wonders why. Was there a catastrophe? Was there a drought, flood, fire, some other disaster? Doesn't appear so. It appears it was just sheer apathy and negligence on the part of the owner of the vineyard. He had no idea what he had, and he was throwing away the very opportunity of a lifetime. That's the strange power of complacency and entropy. It's not even a thing. It's just neglect. And people throw their lives away every day because of it. What the proverb is talking about is living in reality. It is saying that I must work in the land that I actually have. I've got to do some things in my life, with my health, with my body, in my relationships. The writer of Proverbs says that we must be willing to do the work. Work the land that is your land. Work on your body, work on your life, work on your relationships, work on your career, because that vineyard, that's all you have. If it's ever going to be different, it won't be because the vineyard fairy came and sprinkled fairy dust on your vineyard. It will be different because you decided to work in your vineyard. With God's help, of course, but you decided to put the work into your vineyard. It's interesting to me that complacency and entropy go unchallenged in a number of ways. Do you remember at the beginning of this talk, I shared a quote on complacency, and I said the first symptom is often satisfaction with things as they are? There is a quality of contentment that is beautiful. Listen, contentment is one of the most beautiful words in the world. When someone can say, I understand the realities of my life, I understand the things that are beyond my control, I understand and I have learned in this situation, I will be totally content. That is a beautiful thing. But I'm talking about when you could make things in your life better, but you choose to ignore them, to live a lesser life. And that's not coming from a healthy place. I believe it's coming from a place of settling, and I don't think that's what God intends for any of us. I've always known when my boys were young, I used to talk to them about that we were what I called happy copers. And what I meant by that was if we lost everything in life and we were forced to live in a tent in the backyard and sleep on rocks as pillows, I know that Ray, my son, and Ethan, my son, and me, we would put the happiest face on and we would say, if this is the best it can be, then we are happy copers. We will live with it. But that doesn't mean when we have the ability to make a situation better that we would settle for just being a happy coper. No, we would do our very best to make a situation better. For some, it's not settling. For some, it is absolute procrastination. The writer of Proverbs in chapter 6, verse 6 says this, how long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? And you know, sluggard is just another word for a lazy, sluggish person. In Proverbs 24, 30 through 34, he observed, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and then one day disaster breaks in on you like a bandit. This putting off doing what you know you need to do. The words that are repeated in these verses tell us something about how people can justify inactivity. Sleep, slumber, folding of the hands to rest. Those are all pictures of passivity or inactivity. How much longer does the sluggard say it's going to go on? Just a little while. Just a little while. I'm going to take action soon. Mark my word, I'm going to take action soon. But that little while turns into weeks, and then months, and then years, and then it's your whole life. I remember this week a great story. A guy goes to a house where he grew up, and he knocks on the door, and he hadn't been there in 20 years, but he's getting very sentimental, and so he asked the owners of the house, he said, listen, I moved out of this house over 20 years ago. Would you mind if I just walked through the rooms and just kind of reminisced a little bit? And they said, you know what, absolutely, it would be fine. And so the man begins to do that. He walks through his former bedroom and he walks through the dining room. And then he even says, can I go up to the attic? They said, sure. He goes the stairs up to the attic and he sees in one little corner of the attic, kind of out of anybody's view, he sees a jacket that's his jacket from 20 years before. So he gets the jacket up and it's got the spider webs on and all that stuff. He kind of brushes it off and he puts it on and he's saying, I can't believe this is here. And he stuck his hands in his pocket and lo and behold, there was a receipt from some shoes he had put in the shop and forgotten all about. He had paid for them in advance and he never went back to get them. So he, on a whim, he just decides it's going to be funny. He tells them about the jacket. The family says, you take the jacket. He has the receipt. He goes back to the shoe shop and he doesn't say anything. He just goes in, puts it on the counter, says, I'm here to pick up my shoes. The person looked at it, took it to the back for just a minute and came back and said, yeah, they're not ready yet. They're going to be ready next Thursday. Now, if we were live, y'all be dying laughing. Y'all be on the floor. But I know in your bedroom or in your kitchen, you didn't laugh just then. But it's pretty funny. It's been there 20 years and they're just going to be ready Thursday. Isn't that the way it is? I'm going to get around to it. It'll be ready next Thursday. Next Thursday, I'm going to do it. Next Thursday, I'm going to do it. For people who know me, I've always been a huge lover of food, and I can eat a lot my whole life. I left to my own devices, I can eat a lot. And as I got older, metabolism got worse. And so I have known that I need to start doing better with eating. But it's funny to me, every time I have come to that decision, I always say, I'm going to start this on Monday. I'm going to start. It could be Monday afternoon, and I will say, next Monday, I'm going to start this. Doesn't matter how sick I have been and how horrible I've been eating and how much pain I'm in, because it doesn't feel good on me anymore. It's just terrible. I've got to change, and I'm going to change. I promise. And I'm going to start next Monday. That's the way we do it. People say, I'm going to learn that language. Trust me, I'm going to learn that language, just not yet. I'm going to start eating healthy. I really am. I want to be a healthy person. I'm going to start, just not today. I'm going to get my finances under control, because I know I've got to stop this life that I'm living with my money, and I'm going to do it. I just can't start today. I'm going to actually take steps toward that career that I've always dreamed of, just not yet. I'm going to develop those friendships. Trust me, Ray, you'll see. I'm going to start getting some people around me and not living in solitude as much as I've lived in solitude. Or I'm going to learn how to cook. Watch this. I'm going to learn. Or I'm going to go visit that country as soon as Corona's over. You watch me, Ray. I've always wanted to travel. You just watch. I'm going to go and I'm going to travel around the world. Or I'm going to work on my health, or I'm going to read that book, or I'm going to write that book, or whatever. But we procrastinate. And again, patience with ourselves, absolutely. A gentleness with ourselves, absolutely. But you need to be aware that you can be so gentle with yourself that you become so passive about your own life that the years go by and you never do the things that have been in your heart that you want to do. The writer of Proverbs wants to sound a wake-up call, and I hope that happens to you today. The danger is not that I say never. The danger is that I say a week from Thursday. It'll be there, just wait, a week from Thursday. That gives me permission to avoid doing the things that I can start doing today. The writer of Proverbs tells us that the sluggard specializes in making excuses. It doesn't take much of an excuse. It can be a flimsy excuse, but that's how the mind of the sluggard works. I'm just going to put it off. But trust me, I'm going to do it. You know me, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it later. Sometimes we justify complacency or entropy because we tell ourselves we're overwhelmed and we are fatigued, that we do not have enough energy to know what we ought to do. Now, I want you to hear me, because I don't want to ever not be kind, and I don't want to ever be harsh or severe. There are people that I know who have every physical right to go slow and take it easy because they have health issues that are real. Autoimmune diseases, lupus. I was with a dear friend of mine this week, rheumatoid arthritis that is crippling and debilitating and makes the simplest of tasks very hard. These are real, and I would never say to you, you need to be pushing more and doing more. You need to be gentle with yourself. But I'm saying to those of us that don't have those kind of challenges, we need to fight complacency. We need to fight it. We don't want that to be our life. Proverbs 26:14 says this, as a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns on his bed. What's that mean? Certain people they stay in the bed while life just passes them by. And again, I understand if it's clinical depression, I understand, and I'm not trying to be tough on you, please. I'm just saying for me, I know that for me, there have been times that I have just been lazy when I should have been willing to do those things for my vineyard that makes my vineyard the best vineyard my vineyard can be. You have to be willing to fight against that force, I think. You have to tend to your vineyard. If you don't, you're going to have entropy coming. So, what do you do? Well, I think one thing you learn all the way through Proverbs, and I won't get into this, but it's always a constantly saying, consider how the ant does what the ant does. Consider the ant. Consider the ant. There's this idea that ants aren't sluggards. Ants they're out there and they're getting it. They're doing their work every single day. They are doing it. And the idea is nobody is beating them over the head. Nobody is there encouraging them. The little ant just does what it knows it needs to be doing. And there's a sense for all of us to consider the ant. You know, we've got to become our own cheerleader. We have to become whatever it takes to get us to move, to do those things that help us become better in our lives. I used to think that you had to wait for the right motivation, but I have learned it works exactly the opposite. You do the thing you need to do, and guess what? The motivation then comes. Never first. The motivation never comes first. If you do that, you'll be sitting around all day. But you do the thing that you need to do, and then you find self-motivation begins to click in, and it motivates you to do more. Ants also know that when the time is right, they've got to produce, they've got to put up, they've got to store, they've got to do their thing now. And I think that just speaks to all of us and says, you know, I know it's coronavirus. I know it's COVID-19. I know some of you have watched 9,000 Netflix movies over the last 4 months. I've watched more TV over the last 4 months than I've watched in a long, long time. Watched some really good movies, watched some not so good movies. Have put on the 25 pounds everybody says you put on in COVID. I certainly did. But then I said, you know what? There's some things that need to happen in my life. I need to work on my health. I need to work on the kind of food that I put in my body. I need to work on the devotional way that I read. I need to work on the time that I spend actually reading the wisdom literature that has meant the world to me, the Bible. I need to spend time doing that, refreshing my mind on those stories. I need to spend time doing those things. COVID didn't knock me out of all those things. I can do those things because I don't want to cut myself so much slack that I just don't do anything with my life. I was thinking this week, you know, I'm proudly a progressive, and I come from a very fundamentalist background. But as a proud progressive, I have been thinking, one of the things that I don't like about the progressive church sometimes is we make it so sweet and easy. And it should be sweet and easy in the sense that you can't lose God's love for you. God loves you and it's constant, and God's love is always there for you, and you are not ever out of God's love in your life. But I think sometimes we've got to just look each other in the eye and say, we can do more than we are doing. We can do better. We can grow. We can get better so we can do better so we can be better. So that's the opposite of my patience talk. You need to fight against that complacency. You need to fight against entropy. And one final thing I want you to get that's beautiful, as followers of Jesus, we believe with everything that's in us that the presence of God is with us. The presence of God is with us. That God is in us and we are in God. And that means we can go into this kind of a focused, taking care of the vineyard, making the vineyard its very best, with the understanding that we are not alone. You are not alone. And guess what? You have a pretty spectacular vineyard. I sat with a man the other day, and he told me some stories about his life that were as horrific. It broke my heart. Stories about his childhood, stories about abuse, stories about how that led to some mental health struggles that he had had along the way. And he said, you know, you may not even want to hang out with me. And I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I look at your life and I think what you are doing with your life is so friggin' awesome. You didn't have it easy, but you are building that beautiful vineyard. God in you, building that beautiful vineyard when you didn't look beautiful in the beginning, but it is becoming something unbelievably beautiful. So, I don't know where you are. Maybe you've had a pretty easy life and you're coasting. Stop coasting. Hey, there's some growth. Grow up. Let's grow some. Or maybe your life has been crap. You know what? You still were given a vineyard. You still were given a vineyard. You learn how to fight procrastination. You recognize when weeds are growing up and you begin to do those things necessary. And guess what? With God's help, it'll be beautiful. Well, I love you, and I'm not just saying that. That's not microphone talk. I love you. I love that you would sit and you would watch a talk and you would ask God to let it kind of move in your heart, and you would be open to maybe what God would be teaching you, and you feel as if maybe my voice in some way can be helpful in that process. I don't take that for granted. And that you give me 30 minutes of your week, I don't take that for granted. And I hope the words that I've said, I hope in some small way can help you in your life. Let me know if I can help you. Please let me know. I love you. God loves you. Always has. Always will. Have a beautiful week.